To maintain leadership on the global stage, the U.S. must make investments in critical technologies. That's according to Jennifer Buss. She's CEO of the Potomac Institute for Policy Studies. Jen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
So what are the areas most critical for the U.S. to compete globally?
So, the technology areas that we at the Potomac Institute have been studying lead to the United States not only competing, but having to cooperate in this global environment. We talk a couple technologies specifically, semiconductors or microelectronics, and those are closely tied to critical minerals. We look at space as not just access to, but what do we put in space? Energy is another major component to critical technology that we want to be self-reliant on as much as possible, as well as the healthcare industry is another major component of looking at United States competition.
So let's drill down on one of those things that you mentioned, which is the microelectronics and the critical minerals. Where is the U.S. now globally, and what's the risk, Jen, for falling behind in global competition?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, the United States is leading the discovery and development of new electronics and new paradigms. Most of the production is overseas, which puts the United States at risk of not having access to those technologies, not only for defense purposes and federal government use, but also for all of our commercial companies that are here in the United States.
So what about in the space arena then? Both China and Russia are making advances. What is most concerning to you in space competition?
So actually, my biggest concern about space is not launch, right? We have US companies now that are taking us back to space. It's not production. We're able to produce the satellites and the rockets and the things that we want to take to space. It's actually in what we do with the information that we gather from our space expeditions. And so I'd like to see more of an investment in autonomous solutions or machine learning, AI, to really help with that data integration and turning that data into information and into knowledge that we can do something with it.
So then what are the recommendations that you have to really fully take advantage of American space capabilities?
I love these questions. Thank you. So I'd really like to see investments in what consumers or people typically talk about as artificial intelligence. I'd like to see more from the Space Force of thinking how they're going to integrate space capabilities to be able to help national security and each of the different services that are relying on Space Force to provide that type of analysis and pushing out that data.
And going back to the early parts of the coronavirus pandemic, that really revealed issues with the medical supply and health technologies. What were the problems there, and what are your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the height of the pandemic, or maybe at the very beginning of the pandemic, we recognized that we didn't have the medical devices that we needed here in the United States. We didn't have any of the medications that we necessarily needed. And so when countries started shutting down, the United States population, were at risk of losing access to hundreds of generic medications that were being produced in China. The United States currently continues to lead in the research and development of new pharmaceuticals, and we send to other companies and other countries to produce those for us because it's cheaper. And so that was one of the major things that was highlighted, is that while we were able to retool the facilities here in the United States to produce the machines that we needed, the capabilities that we needed, we weren't necessarily able to quickly pivot and reproduce all of those generic drugs here on shore. However, you'll notice with the pandemic that we were able to create whole new facilities to produce vaccines. And so with additional investments and that influx of money, there is a true opportunity to start from the ground up and produce those things here in-house.
And when we talk about global competition, we need to talk about education. And your institute did some studies around that and found that the number of STEM graduates, percentage-wise, is dropping considerably compared to the rest of the world. Give us an idea of the current situation and what can be done to reverse that.
Yeah, so what you'll see is that the number of students overall in graduate programs has significantly increased over the last 60 years. Of those, percentage-wise, the United States is sending more total number of graduates, but percentage-wise, we're smaller and smaller. However, you see that students from all over the world are still coming to the United States because we are number one in most of those graduate programs, and they want to be taught here before they either stay or they go back home to their native country. So a couple of things can be done. One, we're in a high talent hiring crisis right now across multiple industries where there aren't enough people to fill the jobs. And so if we're training people here in those education programs in the United States, we'd really like to be able to keep them here so we can change our immigration and visa policies. We can look at K through 12 and understanding how to make a more robust critical thinking population. So they don't necessarily have to have a complete STEM background. They need to have an appreciation for it. And we don't want everybody to only be math and science focused. They need to be well-rounded, right? So there's a balance there of understanding people and understanding how they can work together and what education level they really need to be at to be a technical part of the workforce.
All right. Well, Jen, I appreciate you being on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.